It's the Chronicles of Aguna. It's our Euros 2020 daily podcast, and we are live.
You're listening to the Chronicles of Aguna, the Arsenal podcast.
I'm Martin Tyler, and you're listening to Harry Symeou.
Hello and welcome back to another live edition of our Euro 2020 daily podcast. We've got plenty to tuck into as always. It's been a crazy day on the channel. There have been so many Arsenal transfer stories. If you haven't caught up with all of that, make sure you go back in the feed. We've been linked with James Maddison. We've been linked with Aaron Ramsdale. Apparently, we've had a bid rejected for Ben White. Emile Smith-Rowe is the subject of interest from Aston Villa as well. So there's plenty of Arsenal talk for you to feed on. So go and check those shows out. Joining me to review the latest action from Euro 2020. A big welcome back to the main man of Shoot the Defence. Stel, it's been a while, mate. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me on. I'll tell you what, that intro kind of took me one way because I wondered, what's going on here? What's this video going? But yeah, thanks for having me on, man. Appreciate it.
Pleasure to have you, mate. Pleasure to have you. And also joining me, as always, the brilliant DDL. I thought you'd be smiling, Dan, after just watching the Azzurri literally destroy Switzerland. You look a bit reserved.
I am smiling. This is my happy face.
That's his happy face.
It's as good as it gets.
He's happy because that kit still fits after 10 years.
21 years young. 21 years young, this kit.
It's a great kit. It is a great kit. I've got to apologise in advance for a couple of things. If you can hear the rain beating down on the man cave, I'm sorry. But it is absolutely pissing it down after a bit of a heat wave here in the UK. If I cough, hay fever kills me, and it always gets worse at this time of night. So I do apologise in advance. But before we move on, still, I've got to ask, for those of you listening on the audio, you won't be able to see this, but Stel has got a Slovakia flag behind him. Stel is a Greek Cypriot from Enfield. So why have you got a Slovakia flag in the background? Just out of interest.
Well, come on. You know the answer already, Harry. Come on.
I might know the answer.
So as you're aware, I support Omonia, a team in Cyprus from Nicosia, or Lefkosia, as you know. And one of my friends plays for Omonia, and he also plays for the Slovak national team, Mikel Duris. So I'm supporting Slovakia for this tournament because Cyprus ain't in it, and I don't think we're going to get in there for quite a while, to be fair. But we've got a good youth set up, so maybe in the next couple of years, not the next World Cup, but maybe the one after, might see some Cypriots there.
Fingers crossed, that would be great, wouldn't it? Right, let's kick off the Euro 2020 chat with the game that took place earlier today in Baku. Wales essentially having to play an away game against an Azeri crowd made up basically of Turkey supporters. As you'd expect, the two countries have very close ties, and the stadium was full. I think there was around about 400 Welsh supporters there, but everybody else was back in Turkey. And against the odds, DDL, your home country, Wales, went out there. Two brilliant performances from two individuals in particular, Aaron Ramsey, Gareth Bale. I thought they were both brilliant on the day. What did you make of Wales's performance overall? Because a lot of people had labelled Turkey as the dark horses in this competition. And for Wales to beat them the way they did, I thought was incredibly impressive.
Yeah, I do like to refer to Wales as my current place of residence as opposed to my home country, but that's just me being picky. Yeah, Wales were really good, and I think a lot of your viewers watching that would have been watching Aaron Ramsey's performance and probably kicking their television set because he covered every blade of grass and he was absolutely exceptional. Well, wasteful in front of goal, but absolutely exceptional. But Wales's big players turned up, and I was really disappointed with Turkey in the opening game, and I was really disappointed with them again. I think they were tipped before the tournament as dark horses, but what we've seen with Turkey particularly, and we saw again, very little leadership, a lot of young players in the side. I think their oldest player is 35, and then he's 7 years older than the next oldest player. It's a very, very young, inexperienced squad, and they don't really know what to do. Wales have got a lot of big players. Champions League winners, players who have won competitions in England, Real Madrid, etc. Dan James is able to provide a good outlet to support them. They've got some solid players at the back who are well organised, and it was a perfect performance from Wales. Really, they were well worth their 2-0 win, and I was really impressed. But I think a lot of the smaller nations who have got 1 or 2 stars, it's how do you get those other players to do their job unnoticed so those 2 stars can perform? And I think Wales got that absolutely spot on today, and those 2 players absolutely ran the show and could afford to miss penalties, sitters, and still stroll home at a canter. That's how good a display it was.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to take away from the rest of the team. That's not kind of what I was saying. It's more of the point of, those 2 guys really made the difference. But still, when Wales missed that penalty, did you fear for them at that point? Because it felt like they'd got to a position where they were almost one step away from essentially putting themselves through. And then they blew the big moment. And I got to admit, I was sitting there going,
No, not really. Not really, mate. I didn't worry for Wales because I think if Turkey were going to get anything, it would have been like a smash and grab kind of victory or a result or a draw. I didn't see anything about Turkey that made me think, wow, they really got a chance to get anything out of this game. In wide areas, they were poor. Their deliveries in the box, non-existent. Dan James had a field day on that left-hand side, really, and that's rare, isn't it? Dan James have a field day in any game. But as you said, Ramsey had opportunities, Bale had opportunities. It could have been a landslide. I just think, as Dan said, Turkey are quite inexperienced. Senor Güneş is back as head coach. We got the job again back in 2019 after winning the league at Besiktas. I think that was his first league title. And there was a lot of expectancy. And I think that's because they got players playing in big leagues. The striker won the league in France at Ligue 1 this season. Çalhanoğlu's at Milan. Soyuncu is at Leicester. So they've got individual players, but as a unit, they're not anywhere near 2002 where they got to the World Cup semi-final. But listen, at the end of the day, Wales did what they had to do. They got the victory, and now they got Italy. So, yeah, let's see how that goes, Mr. DDL.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Stel, just sticking with you for a moment, because you mentioned Dan James there. Dan James looks a really useful player when he plays for Wales. As a Man United fan, obviously, you watch him frequently. What's the difference? Is it because he's being deployed in a certain way? Is it because the expectation is maybe a little bit lower? Why does he seem to shine on international duty, but not so much at United?
I think it's what you said about the pressure, mate. Because, playing for Wales and playing for Man United are 2 completely different things. All right, no disrespect to Wales, but as you said, the level of expectancy is much lower than Man United. Man United, you're, in inverted commas, expected to be challenging for titles and challenging for FA Cups. United aren't anywhere near league title contenders. And I'll say this with my chest out, as they say. But yeah, I think the weight of the shirt is too much with United. And again, it doesn't help when you got social media, because that plays a massive part. Regardless of what anyone says, footballers pay attention to social media. I've spoken to you about this off air. I do Instagram videos for Omonia, and I've had players at the club saying to me, wow, the videos that you do, they get us going before games and all that. And so players do pay attention to social media. So when you message them good things or bad things, they still take it to heart. They shouldn't, but they do. So Dan James has been criticised heavily at Man United, rightly or wrongly. But the way I see it, as you said, again, Harry, it's pressure. Pressure bursts pipes.
I think there's a really simple element to this as well. Whereas he goes away to the national team, he's one of the 3 or 4 best players. He goes to Manchester United, he's nowhere near there. So the confidence of going away and being one of the stars in and around some players who are playing for lesser clubs in lesser leagues in lower divisions has probably had an impact as well. I find with Dan James, particularly today, his prime example really is he's very, very fast. Clearly, he's not a bad footballer, but he's not an intelligent footballer yet. I don't think he's developed that brain that he needs to play at the top level in the Premier League. And as an example, in the second half particularly, there was twice where he's done the work, he's got himself into the position on the break, he's got the legs, and at no point does he look up to see where the ball's going to go. And there was at least two really good chances where Wales on the break could have killed the game. And I just saw a player who hasn't developed his game to that level to have the awareness around him. And at Manchester United, he's not gonna get away with that because there are better players who will come and do that job for him.
Yeah, completely agree. Dan, what about Gareth Bale? Because Tharbo says he really meant it when he said Wales, Golf, Madrid in that order. His pass to Ramsey was ridiculous. I'm not saying that Gareth Bale isn't a good player at club level, right? We've all seen what Gareth Bale is capable of. But over the last couple of seasons, there have been question marks. Returned to Tottenham, didn't really get a look in the first half of the season. But when he plays for Wales, he's another one, isn't he? Who seems to just, I don't know, does he care more? Is that what it is? Is it the passion for his country? Because Gareth Bale, to me today, was as good as I've seen Gareth Bale, penalty miss aside, in a long, long time.
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be that national pride bit that gets you out of bed, no matter how old your legs get, how tired you are, how miserable you're feeling. If the national pride doesn't get you up for it, then you got to question why you're still playing football. So I think there's a little bit of that. The pace of the international game is probably a little bit more favourable, and again, it's probably the responsibility bit. When he turns up, he is Wales. He's shouldering, he's carrying that team, and there's an extra. I think there's an extra 10% that gets dragged out of him for those reasons. I think again, he's not been that bad this season in the games he has played. Clearly, he hasn't got the legs. And what I find with Wales now, and it's part of being the main man, when Giggs got towards the end of his career and he started to shuffle back and play deeper and be able to choose where the best place for him to be was, he clearly didn't have that luxury at Real Madrid. They found a nice place on the bench for him. At Tottenham, he's still been put in an attacking role. For Wales, he's playing he's playing about 10 or 15 yards deeper. Same in the first game. And he was poor in the first game, by the way. But he's almost made the transition back for the international teams that he hasn't made at club level yet. And that's where he is now. He hasn't really got his legs anymore. He's still got his strength. He's still got his athleticism, but he hasn't got the pace. So being able to drop back where he has, and the ball to Ramsey, like your man just mentioned there, which was, a 35-yard ball from deep, he's able to play those positions. And I think that's the level his game's at now. And I think he gets the opportunity to play in that way for Wales. And in a season or two's time, wherever he is next year, he's going to have to make that transition back. He's too old to consistently turn it on, in my mind, at a Premier League or even the Spanish club in those advanced positions.
Stel, what did you make of Bale's display today? I mean, I think we can all agree it was a positive display, but do you agree with that? Do you think he's more suited now to this kind of role and this kind of style of football and being the leader? But to be the leader, you got to play every week, haven't you?
True, but he's also got to be happy, Harry. That's the thing. When he was at Spurs, when he hit that... Do you remember before when he was playing left back at Spurs and he was close to joining Birmingham City and Harry Redknapp didn't have any faith in him, and then all of a sudden he just hit this incredible run of form and then was banging in goals left, right and centre, which obviously earned him that move to Real Madrid. And then we saw the Champions League final. We saw against Atletico Madrid, against Liverpool. This is a happy Gareth Bale. It's a happy Gareth Bale. And it's like with every footballer. When they're happy, they're going to be on their job. When they're miserable, you're going to see injuries here and there. You're going to see, a few misdemeanors, a bit of, not turning up to training, all that kind of stuff. So it's a happy Gareth Bale. But in answer to your question, Harry, I've been dragging on a bit too long. Yeah, I think Gareth Bale has adapted. I think it's a role that Robert Page has put him in. And he's thriving at the moment. But again, look who they played. No disrespect. Look who they played. So let's see what happens if they get past that stage and they play a team with much better quality. I mean, they've got Italy next. So I guess that's the acid test. It's
a fair point, though, because you look at his goals for Tottenham and it's, a couple against Burnley, a couple against, it was that level of opponent where his big performances came in. So I think it's a fair point about the opponent in the context of Gareth Bale. Again, don't want to take anything away from him. If you can pass the ball 50 yards, you can pass the ball 50 yards. But against other teams, you may not get the space for that 50 yards. And that's where, your pace needs to come back in. And I think as he's learning to not rely on his pace, you're going to get 2 or 3 more seasons out of him where he has games where he looks the part. He's a world-class footballer, and he always has been.
Yeah, agreed. Well, there you go. Wales' Euro 2020 dream continues. They've got pretty much both feet in the next round, but of course, it's not conclusive yet. There is still a possibility, but it's pretty much done and dusted. So they can relax, I would say. Might be my famous last words, but that's my gut feeling at the moment. Let's move on to Italy. The Azzurri blew, absolutely blew Switzerland away. And they hadn't scored 3 goals in a European Championship game prior to this tournament, and now they've done it twice in a row. Dan, you must be absolutely delighted.
What a team! What a team! Yeah, it's brilliant. The first hour was absolutely sensational. We spoke about it the last show I came on, how they've completely changed the style in the space of a year and a half, and the culture of Italian football has completely changed. And the most pleasing thing still for me is, at the time when the foot come off the gas, we still found a clean sheet. So I still know if we have to resort back to being resolute, there's still the opportunity to do that, and we might need to do that later on in the tournament. But the one-touch passing at times, the pressing, the intensity, the the slick little moves, and carving Switzerland open time after time and time after time, it was impossible not to get excited and carried away with where this team might go, because they weren't really tipped before the tournament. They were probably 7th favourites going in, not really considered as potential winners, and maybe they won't win. But I think everyone can put in 1 good performance. Now it's 2. Switzerland are a reasonable side, and that was a really, really good display. I mean, we can take a little bit of excitement off by saying, well, okay, it's 2 home games essentially against Turkey and Switzerland, and you'd expect to win those. But it's the performances as opposed to the 3 goals that have really, really pleased me. It's the complete control of a football match with never really been in any doubt whatsoever. And some of the passing and the when you see unfashionable players and players who aren't household names absolutely running the show, that's when you've got a secretly good side. Because there'll be people who aren't us, who watch a lot of football. You follow Serie A a lot. Clearly, I follow Italian football, and Stel knows more football players than me and you and most people I've met put together, because he covers a wide area. But there'll be
because I'm old. Say it.
Seasoned. And I guess the point I'm making is there'll be a lot of people today who had to Google who Locatelli played for. When Toloi came on, they'd have been like, who's that? All right, most people have heard of Barella by now, you'd hope. Acerbi, he's come on, he's filled in for Chiellini, and it didn't look any different. And there's a lot of people here in this team who aren't household names. And when they're running the show to that extent, you're looking at a team who mean business. And I'm really excited. I know it's going to be an enjoyable summer now.
For me, it's about how complete this Italian side are. They can press you from the front. They can catch you on the counter-attack. They're not afraid to have a crack from the edge of the box. I think they've not just transformed the way they play, but they're now a far more complete side, I would argue, than we've seen in years gone by. Still, have your expectations for Italy changed, having seen them in the opening couple of games, or were you confident they could turn on these kind of displays in the first place?
Here comes a party pooper. Listen, the teams that they played, I expected them to beat. I expected them to beat both teams convincingly. Okay, so to me, I haven't learned anything. What I will say, though, is they've kept, 10 clean sheets in a row now? Something along those lines. So they're not conceding goals, obviously. But I'm interested to see how they will react if they do go a goal behind. Do you know what I mean? Donnarumma has got a couple of mistakes in him, with Chiellini possibly missing a game or 2. I don't know if he's done his hammy. If he's done his hammy, then he might be out for the whole tournament. I don't know. I'm no doctor. So as I said, I'll be interested to see how they'll bounce back if they do go a goal behind. That being said, though, I remember Euro 2000 when they had the likes of Antonio Conte, they had Del Piero, they had Nesta, all these world-class names, these big names, and they couldn't get over the line. But now they've got a squad with, okay, I wouldn't say every player is a household name. You know most of the squad, but there are players, as Dan said, that come off and people are like, oh, who's that one that's coming off the bench? So they don't have the big names, which could work to their advantage because the pressure has gone down. Before it was just big names, big names, big names. This Del Piero's got to perform, Totti's got to perform, this one, that one. Now it's like, okay, well, you know, let's see what we can do. And they've done remarkably well. They said on the telly, you can only beat what's in front of you. I agree. But again, when it comes to the latter stages, tournament mode kicks in, knockout mode kicks in, and anything can happen. But then again, when you get to that last 16 or whatever it is, you got as good as anyone chance of winning.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, like if you take Immobile today, you know, he got 3 chances for his goal. You're not going to get 3 chances in the quarterfinal and the semi-final. So that's something I'll be a little bit weary of. I look at the front three and they're playing well now, but in terms of clinical ruthlessness, you know, you're going to need that if you're going to go and win the tournament. I still think semi-finals would be a good return for the team.
But here's a question, Dan. If you look at all of the defenses in this tournament, is there one that stands out for you and say, they'll keep clean sheets throughout the whole tournament? Because I looked at Germany the other day, saw nothing special about them. France, okay, they're a unit, but they've still got mistakes in them. Their fullbacks get forward way too much for my liking. England, don't even want to talk about that. So Belgium, again, they've got mistakes in them. So it's not like back in the late 90s where you can say, wow, like this team is pretty solid. Now it's like, wow, how many world-class defenders are there out there, really?
Yeah, it's almost world-class centre-halves are definitely at a premium. And I think over the last 5 years, we've seen a transition where, you know, defending almost starts in midfield now, doesn't it? And the teams with the clean sheets, like your Manchester Cities of this world, you look at their defenders individually, not this year because Diaz is obviously exceptional, but you look at in recent years, some of their defenders, you think, well, he's not a great player, but they've got 18 clean sheets. And actually it's because they're controlling the game. And I think a lot of what we've seen with Italy in the first 2 games that have impressed me so much is the control and the speed that the ball's been retained at. If you can keep that up against the top teams, and I guess that's what you're saying, we don't know. We've not seen it yet, you know, but if they can keep that intensity and ball retention against the top teams, then, you know, they can win any game of football. And then, you know, who knows what they'll be capable of. But yeah, really pleasantly happy with what I've seen over the last 2 games.
Yeah, and you have every right to be. And we've got to mention Manuel Locatelli because he's a player being heavily linked with a move away from Sassuolo. Juventus are interested, but there seems to be interest from abroad as well. Dan, I'll come to you first on Locatelli. For me, he's not quite, you know, you look at somebody like Barella and you know exactly what he is. You know that Barella is a box-to-box midfielder who can do damage at both ends of the pitch. I think going into the tournament, a lot of people were of the impression that Locatelli wasn't so much that. It was a little bit more of a deeper lying playmaker. But the way he sprayed that pass out to the right-hand side and literally galloped into the penalty area, put the ball in the back of the net after some good work from Berardi on the right, and celebrated without even breaking his stride. That was something I don't think many people thought Locatelli had in his locker. And then, you know, he just, for me, he just looks far more complete than I think people had given him credit for. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, I do. I do. He's got more to his game than we've seen, to be fair. And I guess it's the spray of that pass, isn't it, out to the right, and you're like, that's a good ball. That's Locatelli, right? And he's off and he's gone. And yeah, the Swiss tracking back was horrendous, but it's a sign of a complete player that when he's made that pass, he's then prepared to go and make that run in the box. Because if I played a pass like that, I would stand there and look at it and I'd say I'm quite happy with that pass. He's not. He's an all-round midfielder, and I think that's what we've learned there. We've seen a goal from 25 yards, we've seen tackles, we've seen interceptions, we've seen long balls, we've seen runs into the box, and I think the fact that he probably wouldn't have started if Verratti was fit again is another testament to the secret strength in depth that this Italian side have got. So yeah, it's unsurprising that he's linked with a move away before this tournament. I think during this tournament, all he's going to do is increase the value. And traditionally and historically, Juventus tend to sign this sort of player from the mid to bottom half of the Serie A, who are shining head and shoulders above. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's where he ends up. I just find it amazing how like Ramsey struggled to get into the side. We spoke about Ramsey earlier. He sort of struggled to break through at Juventus. And then Juventus are interested in a player who has similar qualities in a lot of ways in terms of the type of midfielder that he is. It's just it's really odd. But I kind of expect him. I expect him to make a big money move, and I reckon a big Serie A club won't let him go abroad.
Yeah, I feel like that too. And Serie A players, the majority of them tend to prefer, as you mentioned, to stay abroad, to stay at home. Sorry, I should say. I mean, for me as a big Serie A fan, it's great to see the Italian team doing well, because a lot of people say, "Oh, Italian football's boring, or it's crap, or it's nowhere near the high level again." But it is. It really is. It's improved so much in recent years. It did go through a bad patch, and still, looking from England here, it does feel, doesn't it, like there's a bit of a snobbery towards the Serie A. So are you glad that they're kind of showing that you're talking about 10 of the 11 being home-based players going into this tournament?
When I was growing up, and you'll know this because you used to do this as well, and don't deny it. When you used to go to Cyprus, you used to go to the tourist area, you used to buy the pirate videos, VHS ones, for 2 or 3 lires, right? And I was one video I bought. It was a Serie A season where Napoli won it with Maradona.
Hold on. I thought you were going to talk about some other videos that you could buy there for $2.99. But
no. They came at a premium. Those ones that you're talking about, all right? Yeah, I know which ones you're talking about. No, not those. But yes, Christ. So I got that VHS and I watched it, and there were players there like, for crying out, Ruben Sosa was there later on, but prior to that, players like Dunga, players like Ancelotti were playing. Then you had the 3 Dutch players at Milan. You had the 3 Germans at Inter. Rudi Voller was at Roma. Abel Balbo. This league was phenomenal. And then you go to the 90s when you had Veron, you had Batistuta, you had Zola, Asprilla, all these players. And they went to a bit of a lull because of the money or whatever issues. And people are, Serie A's not the same as it was, and there's no quality. But there clearly was quality because their players were leaving Italy to come to the Premier League. As I said, Zola's one of the players. We saw Ravanelli scoring 40 goals in his first season in the Premier League. So the quality has always been there. But as you said, it's this element of snobbery. And I think because it was on Channel 4 before and then they lost it, didn't they? Yeah. And then it went to who had Italian football? We had Serie A in the mid to late 90s. I can't remember. Sky didn't have it, did they?
No. It went to it's been a couple of places, hasn't it? But it went to Setanta Sports for a bit, didn't it? And then
yep.
I think, and then it sort of bounced around these, third-rate television companies, and I think that was part of what you're describing, though, Stel, because in this country it was taken away, then the money ran out, and then La Liga took over in terms of coverage, marketing, the biggest players. Your Messi, Xavis, and Iniesta started taking over, and the Spanish clubs then started to get to the Champions League final, where in the early 90s to mid 90s it was Milan, Juventus, even Sampdoria had a go in the season you're describing. I think 1991.
When Barcelona beat them in the final. Ronald Koeman.
Yeah, I cried. I think I was about 6. My dad had to tell me to grow up, which is fair enough. But and then you fast forward a decade or two, and you're getting shitty Spanish clubs, if you like Alaves in the UEFA Cup or whatever it was called that week, Europa League final. So basically that transferred in the eyes of the English fan, that the league that was rammed down their throat as the best league in the world of all these great players, well, that genuinely transferred somewhere else. But what that didn't mean was that the homegrown Italian quality disappeared. Where Italy has struggled because of the lack of exposure to Serie A clubs, what the English fan has then had to use to make their mind up is actually the household name element and what the international team were doing. And over the last 5 or 10 years, the Italian national side has not been producing good stuff at all. And that's all people have had to go on. But yeah, it's great to see, as Harry said, when you look at the amount of home-based players who are popping up in the starting 11, and there's a lot of good players in in Serie A, and I think if they played England tomorrow, it would be more than close.
Yeah, but the thing is, Dan, what you also got to remember is that a lot of Italian players, I don't know if it's happening so much now, but I remember in the late 90s, early 2000s, a lot of players had two clubs. They were owned by two clubs. Yeah, part owned. So like Locatelli, for example, he was in Atalanta's academy. Now they brought players like Simone Zaza and all these other players, Manuel Locatelliiiii, they all come through the academy. But it was at Milan where he kind of made a name for himself, and then they sold him to Sassuolo a couple of seasons ago. And now he's possibly going to Juventus. So I think it's a lack of patience as well. I mean, Pirlo was at Inter, wasn't he, before going to Milan or via Juventus or something or other. So a lot of players move around clubs. Baggio played for about 6 or 7 teams, didn't he?
Yeah, you don't get a thing. You don't get a thing in Italy where in England you wouldn't have someone plays for Liverpool and Manchester United and Arsenal and Chelsea, and it's the same with the managers. You know, even like Benitez is about to join Everton, and there's absolute uproar in Italy. That's commonplace.
Yep,
you know, Ancelotti's managed Juventus and Milan.
Yeah, Pioli was at Inter, and then he went to Milan.
Yeah, and Antonio Conte, Baggio played for all 3 of the clubs. So did Ibrahimovic. Ronaldo played for Inter and AC Milan.
But it's not because you know, it's not. How can I word this? They will say that they will never join these rival clubs. Like they'll still give it the old, you know, Antonio Conte is a prime example of that. I'll never work for the Italian FA, goes and becomes the Italian national manager. I'll never work for Inter, joins Inter. So, you know, it's not because they're doing it. It's not because they're not bothered about the rivalries. It's just but what you say is right. It's common for them to kind of recycle around the clubs. And that's because as much as Serie A hasn't been, you know, the greatest league in terms of coverage and marketing over the years, there is a history there that people who are brought up in that league and players who have grown up there understand about these clubs. And so to somebody in Italy who's grown up an Inter fan, in their eyes, they'd still rather go to AC Milan than go and join, like the Luca described, the second-rate Spanish club, because that history means something to them. Let's quickly go over to the live chat box. I'll just pick this one up. Thank you to PAVFC. I'm assuming you're a Villa fan. I'm going to put this to you, Dan. He says, how highly do you rate Mancini as a tactician?
The jury's out, if I'm honest, on this evidence, really, really highly. Because if I asked you how would you describe Italian football, you'd say defensive, boring, negative. And in a year and a half, off the back of not qualifying for the World Cup, he's completely transformed the Italian side. And some people have seen 2 Italy games. I watch every Italian game. And over the last 2, to do that and install that tactic and change the culture of 100 years of our country play football, he's got to be a fantastic tactician. The reason the jury's out is it's not something I've seen in him anywhere he's been before. I wouldn't say what he achieved at Manchester City was anything to do with his tactics necessarily. He did a reasonable job at Inter Milan, but I've not associated him with this kind of approach anywhere else. So what he's done with Italy is absolutely brilliant, and tactically he's got it spot on, and he's adapted Italy to be competitive in modern international football. So really, really highly in that respect. I just don't know where it's come from or when it began or how I missed it, but yeah, what he's doing is absolutely brilliant. Hopefully that answers the question in a long roundabout way.
Do you know what? Now you mentioned Mancini, right? I'll tell you, if someone donates a £5, I'll tell you a story that Stylianou told me about Roberto Mancini, which involved R9. Do you remember Stylianou, the Brazilian midfielder at Inter? Yeah. So he told me a great story. It's a great story. So if someone donates a £5, I'll tell the story. There you go.
We'll squeeze it out of you still. We'll squeeze it out of you. But if you were going to donate a £5, that would be great as well. Patrick Vieira was talking, wasn't he, in the studio before the game tonight about Mancini and about how, you know, and Dan was right. You know, you said that what he achieved at Manchester City wasn't necessarily because of how he was as a tactician. But Patrick Vieira spoke quite openly about how, you know, good he was in terms of managing relationships with players. And that's key as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I think, look, anyone who re-signs Balotelli has obviously got one-to-one man management skills that are up there. Because how you disconnect yourself from that man and then rekindle that relationship, I don't know. But I think if you, going back to what we was talking about a little while ago, if you pick a national squad and you're prepared to give uncapped players for unfashionable clubs a spot in your squad at the Euros, I think what that does to the rest of the team is it makes people realise that you are your own man, you've got your own style, and everyone's got an opportunity, and you're fair, and you're going to make the right decisions. And I think that goes a long way with some people. I think we see it at a lot of clubs when dressing rooms break down, is when it comes across that players have their favourites, or they favour certain clubs or people they've worked with before. So you look at some of the players in this particular squad, and the players he's giving the opportunities to, and the players he's selecting, and in the qualifiers as well. I think that goes a long way. And yeah, Balotelli is the prime example. But even with Manchester City, who were, a squad being built to win things, when he didn't get into the Champions League that first time when they lost to Tottenham at the Etihad, the fact that he was allowed to stay and rebuild that side again, I think that says a lot as well, because I think most managers would have lost the dressing room after something like that in a club with that level of ambition. So it's not something I've experienced personally. I don't have any kind of any inside information on how Mancini works, but just looking from behind the scenes and the journey he's been on, it's clear to me there's something there. There's something there where his players trust his methods. There's no doubt about that.
And if he was the one that picked those suits, well, that is absolutely top drawer, isn't it? They look fantastic. I must admit, I was disappointed to see he wasn't wearing a nice belt with it, though. Got to say that I think he let us down a little bit on that front. Let's quickly touch on France. I'm going to come to you, Stel, because we got our first glimpse of France yesterday. Most people's favourites for the tournament. I thought it was a very functional performance from France. I thought they kind of beat Germany and coasted through without ever really getting out of second gear. But did you see anything that, caught your eye from France, or was it pretty much as expected in your view?
I think Benzema had a good game after being out of the equation for God knows how long. We obviously know the story between him and Valbuena and why he wasn't in the national team. I think he had a good game. I think Kylian Mbappe could have done more with his pace, but at the same time, he had the goal disallowed, and then he obviously created one for Benzema, which also was disallowed. Pogba did well. Kante did what Kante does best. So there wasn't anything that... It's actually, tell a lie, there is one thing that surprised me, and that was Griezmann's work rate. And I think they mentioned that a lot on the commentary, how he was tracking back. I don't remember seeing him do that too often at Atleti or even Sociedad. I haven't seen him do that at Barcelona. So, yeah, there's that. But it's an opening game. It's Germany, and if these players aren't up for it and step up for it, then they shouldn't be playing, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, no, I agree with all of that. And Mbappe's pace that time when he got past Hummels was frightening. I mean, Dan, I don't know about you, but I'd have shit the bed if I was up against a striker like that. My word, I haven't seen anyone do that since Thierry Henry to Jamie Carragher.
Yeah, it was. I can't believe that. It just goes to show how fast he was that Hummels actually won the tackle, yet we're still talking about it. Do you know what I mean? Everyone seems to forget that Hummels actually somehow won the ball, which was spectacular, and the ref got it spot on. But yeah, it was frightening. And what that means to France is, if you've got any thoughts about playing a high line against France in this tournament, if you needed a reminder of why not to do it, well, you just had one. So that means you're now playing 20 yards further back than you might like. And how's your intensity? How's your pressing? How's your tactics now, if that's what you have to do? So that's really, 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 really important point. A lot of teams, just speaking about Italy now, they want to control the game on the halfway line. Well, I don't want Mbappe running against Chiellini at any point. So if that means Italy have to change their tactics because of the presence of Kylian and Mbappe, that's massive. It'd be the same with other teams. Spain, England, I don't want to watch Tyrone Mings in a foot race with Mbappe. I don't want to see it if I'm an England fan. So tactically, having that in the locker gives France a massive upper hand in terms of dictating the way they want to play instead of worrying about the other team. I'll tell you what I was really impressed about with France that doesn't seem to have got enough airtime. If we simply lay out what they did, they went and they won away in Germany. That's a big result. Yeah, they've won away from home in Germany in a major tournament. If this was Euro 2020 being held in Germany, that would be considered a major upset. Well, the equivalent is what just happened. Germany aren't a bad side. They were made to look pretty ordinary, and they were restricted to maybe a 10-minute spell towards the end of the game where they looked like they might cause trouble. The only weakness I'd say for France is I look at the centre-half pairing and I kind of think, is there not a couple of better centre-halves out there in France? They've left a lot of players at home. They've got a really big squad to choose from. And the only weakness in their squad on paper is I look at Mbappe. Yeah, and I don't think he's particularly brilliant. It goes to what you were saying before, though, Stel. How many world-class defences are there now? But yeah, you said the fullbacks like to press high. Again, that's brilliant when you're going forward. When they're under attack later on in the tournament, we'll see how that works out. But they're the world champions. They've got a great squad. Pogba and Kante in the midfield is always going to work, isn't it? So, and they've got goals. They've got goals in free forms at the top end of the pitch. So, they're the team to beat.
You saw how high Theo Hernandez was for the goal.
Yeah.
Like a striker. But what I have to ask, and I'm deviating here a little bit, what the hell was Anthony Rudiger doing?
Oh, with a nibble.
What was he doing?
With a nibble.
No, for the goal. For the goal.
Yeah, he was completely caught out there. Completely caught out.
Mate, he was chasing Benzema. Benzema was going to collect the throw-in. Pogba was being man-marked, and he chased Pogba. Next thing you know, Hummels is on his own. My friend Steve described Rudiger as a frog in a blender.
I like that one. We've got to touch on the nibble though, because it's been brought up. Was it a nibble or was it a bite? That's the big question.
I think if you're on the receiving end, it's a bite, isn't it? But a little love bite. I'm not sure what he was doing and why. I think in an era of VAR, if you're trying to wind up the opponent because he's having a good game, I probably would have gone for an old-fashioned stamp on the toe. But yeah, a bit strange, and it seems to have it wasn't the worst bite we've seen, was it? But I found it a bit weird, and it seemed to just be brushed over, and we'll say no more about it.
Some weird fetish kind of type bite. I don't know. I don't know what it was. Just touching on that French midfield though, Pogba, Kante, really physical, both of them, really good on the ball as well. More so Paul Pogba, of course. But I kind of made this point when we were talking about England a few days ago, and I got absolutely hammered because I actually wasn't as impressed with England as a lot of people were. And we'll round up the show by just getting sort of Stel's thoughts on England, because me and you spoke about them the other day, DDO, and they haven't played against since. But I look at that England midfield, and everybody was kind of raving about Calvin Phillips, who I thought was effective on the day, but was ultimately effective because he was physically in a better place, I thought, than Modric, Brozovic, or Kovacic, just in terms of being able to get around the pitch, making challenges, etc., etc. And he done well to kind of rattle them and nullify them. Play against a Pogba and Kante, though. Don't get away with that, do you still?
No, not at all. And the amount of times he was bombing forward, it's almost as if he was playing as a number 9 or like an 8.5. I didn't see Mason Mount do too much. I didn't see Harry Kane do too much. It's probably because Calvin Phillips was getting forward so much. It probably doesn't make sense to people that are listening to this, but if you watch the highlights, you see how much he was marauding forward and getting into spaces that Mason Mount should have got into. Okay, it was a good performance. I'm not going to say that it was a rubbish performance, but again, for me, that it didn't impress me. It didn't impress me. I wasn't on the edge of my seat saying, "Oh wow, this kid is something special." I know he's a top footballer. I know people that coached him at youth level, and they were saying for years that he's going to be a very, very good footballer. But again, you're playing against a Croatia team that were tired. Players in their mid to late 30s. Or I'm exaggerating in the late 30s, but mid 30s, early 30s, played a lot of games this season. Granted, people will say, well, Calvin Phillips plays for Bielsa and he's going to run him into the ground. Yeah, but he's still young. When England come across a team, like you said, Harry, against a France, against an Italy, teams that are solid in the middle of the park and are tactically much, much more stronger than anything Gareth Southgate could ever imagine to be. That's when we're going to see what they're about. And listen, without taking the piss or anything, didn't Phillips have a dreadful game against Man United first half against Scott McTominay and Fred?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, it was 2-0 in 4 minutes, wasn't it? Tominay was absolutely running the show. But I think with England, and you make a really important point there tactically, Kane dropping too deep. The inverted winners playing in was Phillips going over. There's too many players in one square. You know, teams have done this before over the years with certain players. You know, at the end of the day, Harry Kane needs to do his job for England and play up front. If he occupies 3 players and doesn't touch the ball, that's his job done. And if he gets one chance and he tucks it in, that's absolute perfection. But they need to get Harry Kane forwards to create the space for the likes of Mount to create more. What you don't want to be relying on going into the later stages of the tournament is Calvin Phillips having to play a defence splitting fast, because it isn't going to happen too often, is what I'd say. The one positive for England is this. In how many tournaments in our lifetimes have we watched England try and win the whole tournament in the first half of the first game? You know, it's a tournament. Blend yourself in slowly. In 1994, Roberto Baggio didn't score for the first 3 games. He barely touched the ball. And then, you know, the rest of the team get you through and then bang, bang, bang. So from an England perspective, and I don't support England clearly, but from an England perspective, to go about it slowly, put in a measured performance, get the job done and move on, that's great. But the media in this country and the fans in this country need to chill out, relax, let them get on with it. And then when the quarterfinals come, it's a time to start being critical of certain players and expecting 10 out of 10 performances from absolutely everybody. And we'll drop this player and that player. At the end of the day, it's, you know, the first time I actually think Gareth Southgate is quite an intelligent man. I don't know if he's the best manager in the world, but I think he knows his stuff. And he knows that the old school, like Kevin Keegan style of we'll be 2-0 up in 10 minutes and suddenly we've lost the game 3-2 and we still get knocked out of the group stage. That stuff is for amateurs. This is a long tournament, 6 games in 4 weeks. And the way they went about their business was a very professional, solid performance.
Shall I tell you the smartest thing Gareth Southgate has done since being England manager? And not many people talk about this, right? He and the FA are allowing more access to the players for the media. And that is giving him a state of execution, no matter what happens. Remember Terry Venables, he was destroyed. You know, Bobby Robson, destroyed. You know, Glenn Hoddle, destroyed. Graham Taylor, they ended him. But with Gareth Southgate, he's allowed the press to talk to the players. He's given them time with the players to talk to them, to ask questions, press conferences, etc., etc. He's doing a lot for Kick It Out. He's doing all sorts of great PR, right? And that is buying him time. So if England have a shit tournament, pardon my language, yeah, we'll get criticised, but it's not going to be like Graham Taylor, you're a turnip kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? It won't be like Pizza Hut adverts, paper bag over the head. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, they're not waiting for him with the knives.
Is that because he seems like too nice of a guy, though, as well?
I don't think it is. I just think because he knows how to play the media game. I think he knows what he's doing. You know, we've heard it on numerous occasions from people in the press, be it TalkSport, be it the Daily Mail, whatever. He's such a nice guy. He knows what he's doing. He let us talk to this player. It's a game. Access is currency, as they say.
I think he's won the fans over as well, because I think the bar when Southgate was appointed was pretty low. I don't think anyone thought, oh, Gareth Southgate's here. This is an amazing appointment. We're really happy about this. But we can talk about the opponents as much as we like. He got to a World Cup semi-final and he restored a little bit of excitement in England in the national side that wasn't there. So I think he's got the fans on side, which helps with that as well.
But for how long, Dan? For how long? Because he called up 4 right backs and everyone was destroying him on social media.
And also, when the team was named ahead of the Croatia game, he was getting absolutely hammered all over social media about how wrong it was.
A left back. Well, there was a method behind the madness for that. But,
and I think every time every time someone criticizes you and you prove them wrong, it just adds to that credit in the bank, doesn't it?
True.
And
Good point.
and you know, there are some people who will never give anyone a break. If you've decided he's rubbish, you'll find something wrong. But those people become less and less and less. I think, to answer your question though, like, it can change very quickly. The second round of this tournament is going to be tough for England, whoever they play. If he gets knocked out in the second round, it will turn like that. I imagine. You know, there'll be a few of his closest allies in the media might give him a slightly easier time, but the reality is, you know, he needs to get to a semi-final again, which a semi-final in a home tournament when you're second favourites isn't anything better than what's expected. But I think he would get away with that. But anything less than a semi-final, I think, you know, then the crowd of people on his back will increase.
Yeah, the knives will be out indeed. We're coming towards the end of the show. We have got that £5 donation. Hey, from Levi Griffiths, but he wanted to have his say on Wales. He says, I see all the media writing Wales off. Bale is my captain. We are the real dark horses, not Italy. Put some respect on Wales' name. You must have joined the show late, mate, because we were praising Wales at the start of the show. We talked a lot about how good they were, how much pride and passion they played with, and how great it was to see them essentially get pretty much through.
Can we ask Levi Griffiths? That's a very Welsh surname. Can we ask Levi Griffiths where he lives? Not your address and postcode. I mean, what town and city Levi's in? Can you tell us that on the chat, Levi?
Drop it in. Dan is probably quite close by to you. Stel, let's have that story then on Roberto Mancini to wrap up the show, because we got the donation.
All right, so I spoke to Stylianou, who used to play for Inter and obviously Omonia, and that's how I got the interview with him. And there's other stories that he told me, but there was one story. It was the build-up to the UEFA Cup final between Inter and Lazio. And before the game, there was a press conference, and Roberto Mancini was basically saying, oh, there's a lot of talk about Ronaldo this, Ronaldo that. You know, we've got players that can do damage. I'm not really worried about Ronaldo. Well, Ronaldo saw the press conference, and he basically said to Stylianou, you watch what I'm going to do in this final. And the rest is history. He absolutely obliterated Lazio by himself. I think Macagiani has still got twisted blood, hasn't he? The way he just did that double lollipop and put it past him.
3-0? 3-0?
Yeah, Parc des Princes, I think it was. Parc des Princes, or was it the Stade de France? I think it was a Parc des Princes. I can't remember.
Sure. Somewhere in Paris.
It was in Paris, yeah. But yeah, so the moral story is don't piss off Ronaldo. You just didn't want to do that because he'll tear you apart. So
yeah, great stuff. Great stuff. Let's have a look at the chat. Levi says he's in Cardiff. How far is that from you, Dan?
It's I don't know, 25 minutes. So the reason for the question, Levi, is if Wales win the Euros this year, I will personally meet you in Cardiff. If you said Newport, I wouldn't have come. I'm not going to lie. I probably would have drawn the line at Swansea. No offence to anyone listening from those places, but I will personally travel to Cardiff and provide you with an alcoholic beverage of your choice, or two. If Wales win the Euros,
he will. He went to Cardiff for the Champions League final and didn't get a ticket, did you?
Yeah, I was sniffing around for a ticket for Juventus Madrid final, and it was a real struggle, to be fair. And right at the end, there was people quoting ridiculous prices. So I got to go in my own club 2 years later in an unexpected twist of fate. But
there you go.
There we go. So yeah, if respect on Wales' name has been given earlier in the tournament, but if Wales win, I will personally travel to you in Cardiff and ply you with alcohol for a period of time of your choice. There we are.
And his word is good. He said a couple of weeks ago or a few weeks ago now.
Oh, by the way, Harry, you didn't mention Finland. That I've got 2 players that play in Cyprus. Shame on you. Shame on you.
Shame. I was just going to say DDL's word is good, though, because he did say a few weeks ago he was going to drive down for the Champions League final to London, and he did it with about 3 hours' notice, so fair play. And Levi says, I can't blame you on Newport, mate. So there you go. So you're not the only one who doesn't want to go to Newport. Yep, we didn't talk about Finland. I've got to be honest, because to be honest, I didn't enjoy the game. It's probably one of the games. It's one of the games I least enjoyed.
Remember the name Valakari. That's all I've got to say.
I'll remember the name. I will. I must admit, I got a bit excited about Finland when they took the lead, only for it to be chalked off by the VAR. But yeah, well, we'll talk about Finland, I'm sure, later on in the tournament, because I think they might sneak through in that third place. It's not impossible at all. Right, we're going to leave it there. Big thank you to Stel. Stel, how can people keep up to date with your brilliant work? Where can they follow you? Where can they watch it? Where can they listen to it?
Okay, Shoot the Defense podcast on YouTube, also on iTunes. Follow us on iTunes. Follow us on Twitter at Shoot the Defense. Also do an Omonia Nicosia podcast called the No Chof This podcast, which is highly entertaining for even the neutral. And I'm on Instagram at CHESTEL. There you go. Boom.
There you go. Brilliant stuff. Get over there. Get following. DDL, are you on social media these days?
I've had to leave social media for my own mental health. So not on social media at the minute, but I'll pop up regularly on Harry's shows, as regular listeners will see. And I have a little pop at Arsenal, and I take a bit back. So you can save your abuse for me for the next time I'm on.
You come on an Arsenal channel, you have a pop at Arsenal. What do you expect?
Fair game.
What it is. Whoops. Right, we'll catch you all very, very soon with more content. Don't forget, check out our content from the rest of the day. 3 Arsenal shows dropped today. So if you've got some spare time, check them out. All about transfers, all about some of the rumours doing the rounds. We'll be back tomorrow with more content. Until then, take care.
You're listening to the Chronicles of Aguna, the Arsenal podcast.
I'm Martin Tyler, and you're listening to Harry Symeou.